Greetings to you and thanks for watching. As we accompany you in your learning process this summer, we have prepared some lessons. And beside these lessons, we are going to be giving you some tips. These tips are some of the things that we use in being effective. In your word processors, there are certain functionalities that you need to make use of. This will make your work look even better. Today, I'll be sharing with you some of my 3 tips that I use in working on word processors. These tips will help you to be more productive and will also help you to be fast when working on a word processor. We're going to see how to change default settings. We're also going to see how to use tab stops in paragraphs. Many people are still using the space bar button on their keyboard in order to give paragraphs, especially in indented paragraphs. We have said you should use your tab key, the tab key that is found on your keyboard. Today, we're going to show you that. We're also going to show you how you should use text boxes in labeling shapes. Alright, without any waste of time, let's get onto our PC. Now, onto our PC. This is our window. Remember that our word processor window is made up of this ribbon. This ribbon is having some tabs on it. When you click on any of these tabs, it produces corresponding tools. These tools are grouped. So on the home tab, we have the clipboard group of tools. We have the font group of tools, the paragraph group of tools, and the style group of tools. Then, just below these tools, you have your work area. This work area is just like your sheet of paper. And we have said that when you're working on this area, you look at the blinking cursor. Your blinking cursor is your insertion point. So you're going to use your blinking cursor to move your insertion point from one area to another. So we advise that you should be able to use your blinking cursor whenever you are using your word processor. Again, we are hoping that you should be able to master some of the functionalities of your word processor already. Today, we're going to tell you why you should change your default settings. What first of all are default settings? Default settings are the settings that your word processor comes with. These are settings that if you don't change, your document is going to assume. For example, your word processor, when it is installed, comes with the font type Calibri. It comes with a font size 11. If that alone is the default settings that your word processor comes with, it means therefore that at each time that you open a word processor in your machine, the font type will be Calibri and the font size will be 11. You look at this. I just launched this word processor and my font type is Calibri. My font size is 11. That says what my font type and my font sizes are by default. So default settings are the settings that unless you change, they will be there all the time. Now, why should we change the default settings? We should change our default settings because if we use our word processor often in producing documents and the font size that we use often is font size 12 or font size 14, then it will save us much time and it will be more productive for us to change the default or our default font size to 14. Such that when we open our word processor next time, we no longer need to change our font size. It opens in font size 14. Again, if we work often and we work with font type Times New Roman, then it will also be more productive and more efficient for us to change the default settings of our font types to Times New Roman. But how then do we change our default settings? Let's go ahead and see how to change our default settings. To change the default font settings, we're going to click on this little arrow that is pointing downwards in the font group on the home tab. On your home tab, go to the font group. In the font group, take your mouse down to this little arrow that is pointing downwards at the end of the font group. Now click on that little arrow. When you click on this little arrow, it's going to open the font dialog. On your font dialog, you can change quite a lot of features you can change quite a lot of controls on your font dialog. You can change the font type, you can change the font style, you can change the font size, you can change the effects, you can change the font color, you can change underline style, and you can change many other options. You can even go to the advanced tab in your font dialog. In your font dialog on the advanced tab, you can also change some other controls. Now, at the end of all of these controls that we change, you're going to look at the bottom left of this dialog. At the bottom left of this dialog, you go ahead and you're going to click on Set as Default. When you're going to click on Set as Default, the default settings of your font will be changed. Let's go ahead and try this out. I will go ahead and change my default font type to Times New Roman. When I take Times New Roman, I selected Times New Roman. I can go ahead and change my font size to the default font type of 14. When I take the default font type of 14 now, I can now hit on Set as Default. If I hit on Set as Default, a prompt will come out. This now is a dialog that gives me further controls over the default that I want to set. Do I want to set it on this document only, or I want to set it on all documents? I want to set it on all documents based on the normal template. So I'll hit OK here. When I hit OK, that is done. And now if I close this window, even if I don't save, I don't have any problem. Now when I open my word processor again, it comes with Times New Roman and font size 14. Let's go ahead and try again. We open our word processor. When we open our word processor, observe to see that our word processor will come with a font type that is now a default font type. We can go ahead and change this font type. So you can go ahead and change the default settings for all the other groups. Let's go to the paragraph group and see how we can change our default paragraph settings. I'm going to click on this little arrow that's pointing down. When I click on this little arrow pointing down, it will open the paragraph dialog. On this paragraph dialog, I can change some controls on my paragraph dialog. I can change the alignment. I can either change the alignment from left align, center align, right align, or make it justified. I want all my text when I type on my machine to be justified. So I will take justified. This one will therefore permit me to have all my text justified even without me having to justify them thereafter. That will be automatic and that will be by default. I'll now come down to my spacing. I'll not want any space after my paragraph, so I'll take it down to 0. I'll also not want space before paragraph, so I'll allow it at 0. Then for my line spacing, I'm going to take it to 1.5. When I take it to 1.5, it looks quite good to me, and that is okay. I can now set this as default. So again, I'll take Set as Default, and I'll take all documents based on the normal template, and I'll hit on OK. And that is done, and that I've changed my default. So you can change the default settings in your machine. We have said your default settings are the settings that you will use your word processor with even without having to adjust. Again, on your word processor, many people still use the spacebar key to give paragraphs in their document. This is what they do. You use the spacebar key to give a paragraph in your document. This is not a good practice. It's not a good practice to use the spacebar key in giving paragraphs in your document. We're going to advise that you use the tab stop. The tab stop is going to be advantageous in that it will place your paragraphs in such a way that your paragraphs will have a straight line. So we're going to see how we can use the tab stop to define the paragraphs in our document. The first thing when you use the tab stop is that it makes your work look very good. Now this is the tab key on your keyboard. This is the tab key. When you go to this tab key and you press the tab key, it gives a space from the margin of your document to which you can now define your paragraph. And you can choose where this tab will stop. To choose where this tab will stop, you take your mouse pointer just below the clipboard group. On the home tab, just below it, you have these tabs here. You allow your mouse to rest on it. It will tell you the left tab. If I click on it, it will change it now to some other tab. If I click on it, it will also change. I can click, and it's changing. But I want the left tab. Now that is the left tab. Look at the icon for the left tab. That is the icon for the left tab. If I want to start typing my document now, I can therefore take my left tab. When it's highlighted like this, I click where I want to insert a paragraph. Then I go up to my ruler. Look at where my mouse pointer is now. It's found on the top ruler, the horizontal ruler. I now click. when I click, it places a tab stop there. Look at the tab stop button that has been inserted there. Let me remove it and put it again. You remove by dragging it away. Now we take our mouse pointer to that point and we click. When we click, that is where our tab will stop when we click on the tab key on the keyboard. We can take the tab stop either ahead, look at how it's moving my position, or even behind, and that is how it's going to be moving. So that is what you should use in giving paragraphs in your document. You should use tab stops in giving paragraphs in your document, because tab stops will make your document look good and will make all your paragraphs to look good. So before you start typing, define your tab stop. When you define your tab stop, wherever you need a paragraph, you just press the tab key on your keyboard, and that will permit you to be able to insert your paragraphs easily and without difficulty. It will also make your work to look good. The third and the last tip that I'll be giving you today will be that when you draw using your shapes, remember that to insert shapes, you go to the Insert tab. On the Insert tab in the illustration group, you click on the Shapes tool. On your Shapes tool, you have the various shapes. You have to click on any of these shapes. When you click on any of these shapes, you now have your mouse pointer changing into a crosshead. When it changes into this crosshead, you click, hold, and drag to a desired direction. When you do that, you insert a shape. We have inserted a shape, two shapes, and it's made up of an oval shape and a rectangle. Now this, our rectangle, permits us to be able to insert our oval shape. With this oval shape and the rectangle, we now need to add text. I can add my text by using the insertion point. Our insertion point, I just shift my insertion point using my cursor, and I'm able to write and insert text there. However, we say this is not a good practice when dealing with shapes. Why is it not a good practice? This is 50 I've inserted here. I've used the spacebar key to shift 50 and put 50 in my set A. But look at this. That is not a good practice. And I'm going to show you why it is not a good practice. When I highlight these shapes and I group the shapes together, these shapes will not be moving with their labelings. We said whenever you use shapes, you should group them at the end. But these are grouped, but look at what will happen. The shapes are moving and 50 and A is not moving with the shapes. We advise therefore that when you are drawing your shapes, when you're using shapes, ensure that you also use text boxes. Text boxes in labeling will permit you to be able to move the shapes along with the labelings. Now let me use text boxes and we see how this will turn out. I use a text box here and I insert A to it. We said when you do that, ensure that the field, there is no field, and as well there is no shape outline. When there is no shape outline and there is no field, you can now move around with your labeling as you like. You place it where you like, and now take the same text box down into the middle and I put my 50 there. Now I can now comfortably use these shapes and group them with the other shapes, and they will now become one. If I carry this text box to, or if I carry this group of shapes to anywhere, it will be moving with its labeling. That is why we advise that when you are using your shapes, do not use the insertion point in labeling your shapes. Go ahead and use text boxes. When you use text boxes, remember to group your shapes at the end, because if you don't group your shapes at the end, it's going to be inconveniencing working and especially editing or formatting the documents thereafter. Right, thanks very much for watching. We hope that you learned something. We'll be bringing you more tips on how to use your word processor.